I do not claim to be an expert on 5G or SpaceX or Starlink or any of these other things that they're doing. Um, but I do sense the general consensus of natural stuff is better, so therefore these things are not natural, so therefore we should stay away from them and they're going to harm us and everything else. And I do believe there's some truth to that for sure. And I've bought meters and I've had, to investigate things in my own home and build a sleep sanctuary, which is basically just, it's not tinfoil hat, it's just a really beautiful looking, elegant mosquito net looking thing over the bed. And that's, interwoven with silver thread. And so it actually reflects back the RF frequencies. And these things work. You can test them with the meters and everything else. And so if you're doing it right, you can figure out things to do. And there's types of paint. There's different things you can use. But so I know that EMF are harmful. But what I've really detected is that the most harmful EMF is coming from the towers that you can see, or you can pinpoint through like antenna search, or even with your eyes walking around, you can find things. And if they're more than 0.23 miles, closer to 0.23 miles to you, not only are you getting the RF waves, but you're also getting some of the magnetic waves and the electrical power, just force coming from that. And so it's even stronger. But with or without that being perfectly true, outside of my own intuition and studies that have been done in Israel and other places that calculated this 400 meter kind of limitation, you can still understand that the closer you get, the worse it's going to be, right? And so that 400 meter kind of cutoff there's some truth to that. And so finding a place that's not around that is also one of the moves you could do to stay safe now, or real estate, or whatever. You're going to buy a place. But one of the dangers, so I know that that's dangerous, this EMF, but like I also know that the 5G, Wuhan, and this kind of rollout with these mini microwave towers look like little birdhouses and little mini towers, and sometimes you can't even see them. They're just extensions of light poles, and they're covered, and there's so many ways that they've found ways to hide them and to make them not indestructible but difficult to destroy, and there's a lot of things that can be done in a given community. Now, that's one strategy. The other strategy would be Wi-Fi, meaning all these little, or was it Wi-Fi? Yeah, Wi-Fi, all the little, what do you call it? Routers that we buy now. They're stronger and stronger. When I pull out my meters on them, they're just unbelievable. I never use Wi-Fi. I always get a router that you can turn that off. You go into the IP section of the router, even if it's a basic router, and usually there's a legality there to be able to turn them off. So that's usually possible on all these routers. And so going in there, turning them off, and getting a setup, and maybe having to buy things like switches or whatever you have to buy to get things to work in your cabled environment. But just do it, and it's an investment for a long-term safe space. But so I've noticed that those things are very powerful too. The Wi-Fi are very powerful. What they can do to your body and sleep and everything else, and I can feel it. I don't even need the meters anymore. I mean, you could turn that on and not even tell me, and it's just like it's instantaneous. I get that feeling in my brain, like something's like just pushing or heat, or I can't. There's something going on, and maybe it's a subtle intuition over time due to cleaning my environment. That happens, and if you clean your environment from a lot of these things, it's almost like someone said, if you want to know if you're an alcoholic, stop drinking and see what happens. So you stop drinking, and then you start realizing, oh, I actually need the drink because I keep coming back to it. Well, it's the same with this. If you really want to see what this stuff is, then stop all of it. Stop that environment. You go, some people go out into nature, whatever it is, but stop it all, and then you'll see, wow, these things were affecting me. So we can't feel that if we're just in it all the time, nor is it even wise for our body to allow us to feel that. If we can't get out of it, your body will just stay in that mode of defense, and then when you do get out of it, the bills come for all of that expended energy and all that detoxification and things that have to happen. There's a lot of detoxification of tissues and everything that happens when we're exposed to these waves. They coagulate the blood. They create all sorts of hormonal imbalances. There's all sorts of things happening there. This was proven with electricity even. So, I mean, this is beyond electricity. They are electromagnetic, but this has already been proven with a lot even more ancient technologies. according to us. But so then how do we place this whole 5G thing? Everybody wants to jump in on that's bad, it's horrible. But so, yeah, it is in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of shady people involved in the investing of it, from Bill Gates on down to Amazon. And there's a lot of people behind this investment. They want to control the world. They want a grid. They want, whatever. They want to be able to, can have their drones and everything else, and everything be controllable by, an algorithm, and not have to put any manpower into it, because maybe they're thinning. The rich it's thinning into a small little group, and this is the only way they feel like they can retain power. But so the 5G, militarily, the 5G is dangerous for us not to have, to be honest. It's not because I'm pro 5G. I'm not. I just start to realize that the 5G is going to be tackled by other nations, China included, and they're going to take over this sphere and these belts above us, and these satellite deployments and launches and creation of their own, and they're going to run the space. And that's why, the Space Force was probably created not because of some silly idea that sounds like Star Wars, no, but because there's a war going on up there, and there's channels of communication, infrastructure. Our critical infrastructure now, as far as communication, even military, is through all this network and satellites and controlling planes and GPS. And you can thwart a lot of things with this. And so if one group is able to maintain primacy or hegemony there, and take and bring all of this capacity and satellites up into that sphere, then they will be able to control not only the drones and the robotic warfare and the drone attacks and the manless this, manless that, missile rocket control, and then even the sabotage of those who don't, because of more eyes in the sky, more perspective, and more work put into owning this sphere. So there's a need for the U.S. to find a way to compete with that, to have this energy that's not, we don't want to be destroyed. And so the 5G is needed, but I wouldn't call it 5G per se, because 5G is just another word. It's basically just an addition to the 4G and all the systems that we already have in place. That's just another level that brings it to what you could call like a 2.0. And the power and the speeds and all that stuff. So, but that demands, especially in the Chinese way, they rolled it out in Wuhan, that demands every 100 meters having a small little mini tower, everywhere. And you have to have these microwaves, and it's very cost prohibitive. To cover all that land, all that, that's just like, it's very intense. And so the SpaceX, and I'm not saying I'm behind Musk or I'm even pro this, I'm not. I'm just trying to watch with eyes of, could this be twist? Sometimes I see things happen, and I see that they go towards the negative, and all these negative actors are around it or investing in things, and so you think, oh, it's bad. But every once in a while something will show up, and it will be used to a positive light, or it'll get co-opted by I guess you could say it will be taken in and become public, and over that technology becoming public, it starts to become its own entity, and then it can have more of a positive force. It can have some of the positive force built into it, is what I'm saying, even at the behest or despite what the people originally tried to create with it. Now, I know that sounds kind of odd, this kind of, dialectic half kind of thing, but it does work that way. And sometimes people with great acumen and great evil, even, that want to destroy humanity, maybe you could say, these Darth Vader types, they can create institutions and things which end up having, like, for example, you could pick like the FBI, you could pick the CIA, you could pick all these places which we think are kind of evil. They were created, and there's spy capacity, and then they deal in sabotage and toppling governments and everything else. But these things also have a lot of good everyday American people working in them. And so you have this kind of like counter force inside of that place. And so it's not all cut and dry what can be done. It's like, I guess you could say, even this Trump election or whatever that was, like nobody saw that coming. Hillary had that in the bag, according to most of us, but that didn't happen. So what I'm saying by that is the system, as tricked out as it is, or as skewed or as we think it's just 100% corrupt, which it is. A lot of it's corrupt. A lot of Congress is corrupt, and Democrat and Republican, all sides are corrupt. But even in all of that corruption, there's a chance for something totally surprising and totally different to come through. Whether that you agree with that or not, it still shows this capacity for something that you didn't see coming, which is not what a controlling mind wants. They don't want anything that can't be seen coming. That's the opposite of what they want. So there is some other spirit that can come through that, which can be positive. So I'm trying to have that perspective on looking at this. So I'm seeing the SpaceX from that perspective. Like, you build all these satellites up there, and they even stated on the website when they signed for this with the FCC that they, wanting these low bands that they're using for their satellites, like 350 kilometers above us instead of, way high up. And so, 350 to 1,600 or 2,000 maybe kilometers in this low band. And this low band, you have much better, it travels through rain and fog and weather storms and stratosphere. So it goes through all that. And so that's, so you have these, imagine these 24,000 or say 12,000 from SpaceX, 12,000 from Amazon, these type of satellite systems they want to put up there. And we don't trust them either. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that this system could create, a lot fewer base towers, and then the base towers would be able to be used just to ping up and ping back with more strength. So that's more of like strength, like almost like your cell phone you get today. Your cell phone is, that's how satellites work, is something from the ground is pinging up and it's coming back down to something in the ground. And so, or coming back up and going down to the phone directly. And so, so this kind of idea is actually much less dangerous as far as electromagnetic waves and everything than the multiplication of towers would be all around you. Now, I'm not saying that one is mutually exclusive, like one won't have the other, like they may be planning all of it, but there is a chance that this top level version of it, where it's satellite-based internet that's traveling at the speeds, the satellite-based internet that they're doing is basically 1 gigabyte per second. So it's kind of like fiber optics would have been. And it's only possible because it's not fiber optics. It's running through a vacuum, that signal. And so that vacuum, you can move faster than fiber optics, even faster than glass. So you can get that latency to where it appears like the same as glass or fiber optic or whatever you want to call that. So so there is something interesting there, right? And so that interesting piece would allow us to have some sort of military capacity and to retain that space, but then in the future be able to set up a network which is more, it's not perfect, it's a lesser of two evils. You're not going to get back to perfect nature back in the pagan world and we're going to go all the way back into nature and refix the whole earth and everything else. I doubt that's going to happen. And if you listen to Steiner, we're actually moving forward and the earth may degrade even more. And so I'm not saying I want to degrade anything. I'm just saying that what's the human being's evolution about and what is he capable of? Is he capable of handling certain limits of this radioactivity as long as he's able to evolve and grow forward? Now, you could say that's crazy. There should be zero this and zero that, and there should never be anything, whatever. The human body was meant to absorb mercury, and not have it go straight through the body and not absorb at all. The reason we absorb it a lot of times is because of the technologies and other things that they've done to the mercury, or because it's coming through leaky gut. And so there's things in our system which are broken, which are allowing these things to get in. But what I'm saying is the system itself was set up even for these crazy radioactive, all this stuff, humanity was built to endure and to overcome. And so I'm not saying we can take tons of this stuff. I'm just saying that there is a way of being able to grow and evolve even inside of certain contours of this. Now, what I mean is there might be a transitional phase of technology where we're able to master technology instead of technology mastering us, which we are just baked in all the waves and all the signals are pushed too hard. The Wi-Fi signals that we need would only be at 1 bar. They would only extend to your house if we were intelligent. But because there's dark forces involved, they push that signal all the way out. And you could say it's just money. okay, if you will, because then it creates a Wi-Fi network everywhere. So maybe it's not worth it to go into any other explanation. But that signal's 10 times the amount that it needs to be. And this is happening with everything, including the base towers we have here are totally different than the 5G, the SpaceX towers that they're planning with these. I forget what they're called. They're called the antenna. I forget the name of that. It's like polar, I forget. It's the way that the antennas are shaped. So they're shaped in a way which kind of arms them. So basically, one of the articles I read says we're moving from blankets to bullets. So basically, the blanket is these 4G towers that we have that are built sometimes too close, especially if you live in like some area that's, I mean, you have to watch where you live. But so this blanket is just hitting everyone. Everyone's getting affected by it, and those who are closest to it can have severe consequences. Not in year 1 sometimes, maybe in year 3, maybe in year 8, but the cancer, the deep sleep, destruction, all these things are happening, despite whatever you may think. And so they just are they're not built to kill you immediately, but they are dangerous. So this type of horizontal world of 5G really is the most scary one, because it's like right next to you, and not only is the electric and the power and the intensity there, it's not just a blip of a signal. It's like an intense level of blanket, right? And so this non-blanket approach, which is coming through the SpaceX idea of the satellite increase. So basically your satellites are like bullets and lasers. So you bullet the information up there through a ground tower, it hits the satellite, and that bullets down to the phone. Now, if people don't want to use phones, they want to go back to landlines, then they would be much more spared in this environment, this SpaceX environment, than they would be in a typical horizontal 5G rollout, right? And I'm not saying they're going to completely disappear one or the other. And I'm not even saying that cross-contamination won't happen. All these phones getting hit in different areas and different, even Internet of Things, like different printer or whatever it is, all these Wi-Fi boxes, everything else, everywhere they are. Yes, okay, that whole thing can create a hard-to-avoid reality. But it's still much more avoidable than if we build this whole thing out from a horizontal breakdown. And so that would be way more destructive. And that's the Chinese model on this, is to go that way. And because it's anti-democratic, you can go straight into people, straight into harm. Whereas this other way, there's a chance to avoid some of that harm if you're smart. Like I don't have the proof, but with all the stuff that I've done on EMF testing, I feel like if a 1 gigabyte EMF satellite ping was coming in and it was that strength, I think magnetic shielding or something, like a type of wallpaper that's a little bit thicker than wallpaper, which convinces the magnetic part of the wave to come around the house. And then also, if it's non-magnetic, which I don't think it would be, I think it would be more on the RF, the radio frequency. So, but the radio frequency would be able to stop through a principle of reflection, or like the sleep sanctuary, silver threaded tissue, and things like that. So that would be able to be stopped, or the paint, the shielded paint, like multiple layers of shielded paint. So I think that you would have a much easier time shielding yourself from that eventual future. And that's not even 5G. The SpaceX and the satellites going up there, that's not 5G. That's not part of that network. It could be part of the network, but that's not the plan. The plan for now is that that's its own network of broadband coming through the satellite feature, instead of we already have satellites set up to some degree in that, like with the military operations and how they're using. So they already know about this intensity, but now, they're allowing some of this band to be repurposed for private sector, and in order to not just bump out the military, but to allow, to allow that China can't topple us through their allowance of these bands. And so it's the same space. I mean, the Earth moves, and it does move. So even the ground towers for a SpaceX system would have to move. They would have to be rebuilt. Not only they would have to be rebuilt every so often, but they would also have to rebuild the satellites every 5 years. So it's when you do low Earth, you have to have more satellites, right? Because it's closer. So more coverage means you have less perspective. So it's very costly. And I'm not even saying that the SpaceX is the eventual people or idea that it needs to be. It could be hijacked by something much more common oriented, like public, and that could be something which could help create that. But maybe we just need those people to start it, and then something to be figured out. It's kind of like Amazon. Amazon, even the founder of Amazon said that Amazon could disappear someday. But it would be, and if it did disappear, hopefully all those technologies built inside of it would be able to be co-opted by the public, and we'd have a lot of that as a public domain at that point, and been co-opted by the post office or whatever it is. So there's a lot of potential there for things to be re-put back in their place as the critical infrastructure that they are. Once we start to get back to our constitutional mindset, after we wake up from the scare of what all this is and how dangerous it is for us. But I don't think the scare should be anti-5G per se. I think it should be, and maybe, yes, 5G in the Chinese Wuhan sense, yes. But, and SpaceX is not that. But what I'm saying is something like this idea of up above us and come back down without the horizontal approach. The horizontal could be up there too, like they can build lasers into the satellites where they can communicate with the satellites with each other, and then that can relay signals to get the right angle and have the right speeds and everything for certain parts of the Earth. So I get that, but we could keep that happening up there, a lot of the intensity. So yes, we would have the ground towers, which would be intense, but those would be fewer than if we would have done it any other way. And that's the reason why they're aiming at this, because even though it's very expensive, it's probably the most cost effective. And China could do it too if they could have as many launches and have all that. And I'm not even saying the launches are healthy. There's a lot of people that believe the launches create all sorts of tears in the ozone, and that doing 300 or 400 launches in a given 2 or 3 or 4 year period would be destructive for the whole planet. It's possible. So I don't know that either. I'm just trying to have a much more subtle viewpoint on what this is and how we might be shooting ourselves in the foot and allowing a takeover once again if we don't be careful. It's like almost the people who hated nuclear energy at a certain point, or even coal, or even an energy that you have an abundance of, and they hate that and they want to trade it for this other one. But what they don't realize is, if you give up your abundance of whatever that is, then you can be third worlded through energy. And so it's the same with the military and everything else. So we have to be more subtle in the way we see 5G, and it's not 5G, whatever, but these ideas of satellite and everything else and how this works, because it might be a transitional stage which has to happen in order for us to maintain hegemony and get closer to maintaining freedom in the future, even if it's just for certain pockets of humanity. But we can't, if America falls and China takes over, then we have no defense from it all coming down, with the exception of people rising up, which could be another thing. And maybe that's another chapter. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not pro 5G at all, and I'm definitely not pro EMF. And I make sure that my home doesn't get any of that anywhere. And I even wear EMF underwear. It's not tinfoil hat. It's very intelligent. You have better erections and everything else, so it's not stupid. But just trying to pay attention to how we need these things and what they could be used for, and the transitional nature they may have or they may play in maintaining hegemony. You have to be very careful with trying to shoot all that down and try to, and I don't believe in a lot of the people who love all this technology and love Musk and love Tesla and all. I mean, they love all this stuff. Tesla cars cost way more, and they're very unecological, and the amount that you have to spend collecting all those special metals to make those batteries, and it's much more ecologically disastrous, those cars, than just coal being turned into gasoline or petroleum based cars. It's way more expensive and way more non-futuristic. So you can't imagine a world of Tesla cars. You think you can because that's the way that the movies point it, but you can't, because the cost would be too high to get that to be anything but a small percentage. And so that's where we're getting into problems, is we have to figure out what is the actual state that allows for our abundance. And so, without being super futuristic-y in our minds, because the way coal works now, the uptake is clean, and there's a way to use that energy too, and that the industrial energy. So we have to be smart. We can't be just mono-focused on one way of looking at things. It's a body electric, the world, and we have to figure out from oil to gas to shale to international to fracking to hydro to biomass. We have to figure out all of that and make that work right, and not just a simple myopic idea on one level. So anyway, if that can help, hopefully it can. Try to stay more subtle, a little bit more spirit. When I say spirit, I think of the spirit of contradiction, but it's not. It's like allowing things that seemingly they're seeming contradictions, and allowing them to sit a little bit longer in yourself, to where you can find that there might be some sort of harmony that emerges from that. Whereas normally it's like, oh, we have to polarize on one or the other. And it's like, just let them sit, and you'll see that there might be a reason that this could pave a transition to something else or whatever. And so we have to kind of be have a long view in how we're looking at this as far as freedom goes, and maintaining hegemony to a certain degree, and being able to defend the rights of nations and people through the American Constitution, that place where those rights were the most translucent. And so there's an important factor there that they would love to destroy. So we have to be careful. So hopefully that can help someone. Thanks. Mentioned in our last video the connection between 5G and the magnesium, the transdermal magnesium. Very important product we sell as well, so full disclosure, but it's a natural calcium channel blocker. This allows for the cells to not over rigidify and stay dilating, stay capable of detoxifying and getting some of these things out, instead of rigid cell death that happens through calcium oxidation that comes into the cell. And so you need a limiting factor there, which is natural, because magnesium and calcium work together. Magnesium is kind of like the feminine and calcium the masculine. So magnesium helps to bring the flexibility and soften the hard calcium to create a structure which is much more flexible, which is actually stronger. So that's one of the things. And then it's also one of the most important enzyme deficiencies or enzyme catalyst in the body, and it's used for chelation and everything else to bring toxins in and out of the body. So this is very important for electromagnetic frequencies, to have our nervous system with a high level of magnesium. This is going to help the nervous system to fight and to stay kind of active. And so this is probably one of the most important products that you could take internally. Of course, this is not just an internal issue, but there's also a cleaning of the environment and figuring out where things are coming in, and a lot of things mentioned previously, but I just wanted to mention that. So come check us out at theheartoftradition.com. It's only $3 a week for this product. It doesn't cost a lot. It helps with everything in a lot of different ways, and it can be used for a lot of different things. And so it's a powerful product for cramps and pains and sleep and the nervous system stress, but also to increase chelation and detoxification of a lot of these things that are happening in the body. We forget that when EMF and 5G and these types of waves are hitting us, they're coagulating the blood. This is creating tissue and different types of exodus of acid residues and things that have to come out. Their actual physical things are being created. And so magnesium helps to chelate these things through different forms of conjugation with other minerals and acids and things, and it allows for that to be taken out of the body. So don't go for the fake stuff. Blue glass bottles only, without endocrine disruptors, at theheartoftradition.com. Thanks.